Building a family can be a complicated, messy, lonely, and sometimes heartbreaking process. But you don't have to navigate this challenging journey alone.
Welcome to the All Paths podcast, where we support and celebrate all of the different ways there are to try to grow your family. We are your hosts, Kate and Emily from the nonprofit organization All Paths Family Building. And today we're talking with someone who's dear to me, Carrie, about her journey and her work in this space. Carrie, thank you for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me on. I'm just super excited to be here.
Hey. So before we get into talking about your own family building journey in more detail, I'd love for you to introduce yourself for our listeners.
Absolutely. So I'm Carrie Van Steen, and I am an IVF mom, and my daughters are going to be 20 years old. And I started this journey well over 20 years ago. Not a clue that this was going to be my path in life. And I have to say that it's been the biggest blessing of my life. Something that was so hard and so personal became literally what changed me as a human being. And so I've been working in this field well before my journey, and I stuck with it, and I just pay it forward every single day. I believe in what we do. I believe in what our physicians and our scientists are doing, and of course our patients are just in my heart every single day.
Well, that's wonderful. I can't wait to hear kind of all about your professional life, but can you tell us a bit about your journey to start a family? Where did it all begin?
Absolutely. So, I was one of those people, I think I said this once before to somebody, the first sentence that ever came out of my mouth was, I will now take my baby for a walk. Like, I just wanted to be a mom. And so, when I first got married, I was really, really young and I wanted kids right away. And my husband was like, we have to wait. We have to save the money and get the house and get involved, get our careers going. And I didn't want that. I'm a very impatient person. So I waited, and probably, 3 or 4 years in, and not really protecting ourselves, so to speak, just kind of like, if it happens, but we were really trying not to have it happen. But there were plenty of opportunities where it probably could have happened. It never had happened. Normal periods, like a clock. I never in a million years would have thought that there would have been anything going on. And I started trying at the same time as my sister-in-law. We were hoping to have our babies together, like it was going to be this whole thing. And it just wasn't happening. And I just knew in my gut, and I had just started working in this field. I was on the administrative side of things. I have no reproductive endocrinology background. I worked in medicine, but never had any kind of background in it. And so after a few months, I just put my hand up and I went to my OBGYN and I was like, can you just try a few things? Because I think something's wrong. And she did a bunch of testing and she said that everything was fine. It was all good. After another month went by, I'm like, no. I had him go get a semen analysis. Like I was on it. And then of course, when we hit probably the 5 or 6 month mark is when I saw a reproductive endocrinologist, because I just knew in my gut, something wasn't right. This should have happened, And so I would say, definitely hard in so many aspects. First of all, we didn't have insurance coverage for IUIs. The diagnostics, I believe, were covered. And then of course, relationship-wise, my husband didn't like doctors. He still doesn't like doctors, but he was not happy that I was dragging him to a fertility clinic. And you know what happens when we drag guys to fertility clinics? He thought that I was impatient. He really wanted to wait, but I just knew something wasn't right. And so it turns out we just needed to do some IUI, right? That's what they said. Let's start off with some Clomid. So we started off with some Clomid, negative pregnancy test. We did another cycle, negative pregnancy test. And then our third cycle, when that failed, and it's funny, when cycle 1 happened, like we were high-fiving each other on our way back from the clinic because we figured it worked. Like this is, that's it. And so by the third time, obviously we had to figure out what was going on. And I went for a second opinion. And, this is something that I talk to my patients about all the time, which is, advocate for yourself. Always advocate for yourself. If you feel like even the people at your clinic aren't hearing you, your nurses aren't hearing you, you have to speak up. So I took advantage of being in the field that I'm in, and I got in touch with another reproductive endocrinologist who was lovely, and he helped me with just other tests and things that we hadn't tackled. And we found out that we had a 0 to less than 2% chance of ever getting pregnant on our own, and a less than 5% chance of getting pregnant with IUI. So those 3 rounds of IUI, maybe 5 or 6 months spent injecting myself, taking Clomid, all the things that I did, results, it wouldn't have happened. And then we were told that IVF was our only option. And at the time, ICSI was very, very new. And it was like the answer to everybody's prayers. And so they were like, yeah, a little bit of IVF, a little bit of ICSI, it's going to work. And so, I work in the financial aspect of IVF right now. And I was offered something at the time called the Integramed Shared Risk Refund Program. And that's where I worked. I worked for Integramed. And I turned it down. I did, because I was like, oh, I'm 20, I don't know at the time, 28. I was like, I'm 28. Like, I've got this. It's going to work, And so I turned it down. And we went to our clinic and we paid out of pocket. And probably at that point, it didn't even occur to me that it wouldn't work. Like, that wasn't even on the table. So needless to say, my entire cycle was beautiful. I made a ton of eggs, and oh, your ovaries are beautiful and your uterus is beautiful. And you're like, oh, like, I'm great. And then I get this call that I'm not pregnant. Right. And my world just came crashing down around me, because how is that even possible? I'm at the best clinic, at the best doctor. I have the most beautiful ovaries, the best looking uterus, and there's no baby. And so, of course, what do? You go home and you cry. I'll never forget that day. It was probably one of the only times I've ever seen my husband cry. It was devastating. And it was more devastating because we had no more money. We were done. I mean, whatever we had saved for our first home was gone. Whatever we had in a credit line on our credit cards was gone. But we figured out how to squeeze some more money out. And a few months later, we had a frozen embryo transfer. And I got the call that I was pregnant. And of course, beyond thrilled until they told me what my beta was. Knowing what I know, being in this business, a beta of 70, it's good, a good beta. I wanted a beta of like 500 because, I'm an overachiever. But I was like, that's fine, right? It's over 5, 70 is good. Maybe had late implantation, whatever. Because you start with, that's one of the things that is hard about being in this business and being a patient, right? You just know way too much. And then a few days later, I got a call that my beta went down. And so it was that game of like, is it ectopic? Is it a chemical pregnancy? And that was just the cruelest joke, because you literally have, a day or two to feel like you're on top of the world, and then it just crashes down. So we took some time. I would say that was probably what started me with having anxiety attacks, a lot of depression. I never in my life felt all of those things. And I just think everything just came down on me. And so it took me a little bit of time to sort of pull myself together. We had a procedure done at the time, it was very new. It was called the saline sonogram, which again, like now it's like part of every, it's part of, I felt like in a way, looking back at it, like I was kind of a science experiment, right? Like they were just trying all these new things. So now when I talk to patients and they're like, I'm having a saline sonogram and I don't think I want to. And I'm like, oh, you need to, you just know. And you're kind of like, so they did this. And I had like a uterus full of polyps. Like, hello, where were you this whole time? Like nobody knew. And so they did a polypectomy. I had a DNC, and my last and final transfer, it was my last 2 embryos. We were done. No more money, no more embryos. We were on the adoption path at that point. And it worked. It worked. It was probably one of the most stressful transfers that I had had. I felt like nothing was going right. I had no hope. I remember that night of my transfer, going to an event for Resolve in New York City at the pier. And I worked it with Lisa Rosenthal, and I had heels on and a dress, and my at the time, my pantyhose were like so tight, and I was on my feet all day. And I had remember saying to my physician, he was at this event, and I said to him, I can't lay on my couch one more day with my feet up. Like, I just need, this has to just be it. And if it's not it. And I remember, I don't know what it was, but I think my attitude had kind of shifted, and I was shocked when I found out I was pregnant. And, it was not an easy pregnancy. For me, physically, it was an easy pregnancy. Emotionally, not an easy pregnancy. And I think that that's something that is so important, especially for you guys with what you do, because knowing that it's not over for us when we get that positive pregnancy test. It's just not. You have 9 months of worry and stress. And when is that rug going to get pulled out from under me? And I don't think I actually exhaled until my daughters were in my arms. And from then on, this was just my life. everything. My kids were my whole world. This career has been my entire world. This is what I do. This is my passion.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And so much of it
Oh,
resonates with me, and I know
I
Emily
know.
too. And so it's like, I don't even know like where to begin, but I'm so sorry for the loss that you experienced along the way. And also just the losses you felt each time a cycle wasn't successful.
For
And
sure.
I really can relate. I mean, I think I was just naive, and hopeful, and they were kind of intertwined. That
Mhm.
same thing. I thought my first IUI was going to work. And then I thought my first IVF was going to work. And I was just like, what? And I was struck when you were saying it's nice things to say, like to say that your embryo is beautiful or your
Yeah.
uterus is beautiful or something like that. But I feel like in a way that makes it worse when it's not successful.
100%. 100%.
And it's also like, it kind of doesn't matter, unfortunately, as so many of us have learned, like it doesn't matter really what your embryo looks like. I mean, it can be an indicator of a chance of success, but not like, so in a way, it's like, don't tell, because we see all the people after the fact that are like, but they said it was
Yeah.
beautiful, or they
Yeah.
said it was great at this or that. The other thing I can really relate to is like the one and only IVF cycle that was ever successful for us, that is now our daughter. Had the worst attitude. So generally speaking, I believe in optimism, but I was just done emotionally, and I was so negative, so bitter, and then it worked. So now I'm like, maybe, I think people should not be hard on themselves about if they're in an optimistic headspace. I think that's wonderful. But if they're in a negative headspace, I don't think they should feel that automatically means they're not going to be successful, right?
For sure. I mean, I think that one of the things that I tell patients every single day when we have I have this conversation that I'm having with you guys right now every single day. And one of the things that I say to them is be good to yourself. If you want to get off that couch and go eat a bag of Cheetos, go eat a bag of Cheetos, go have a bowl of ice cream. Like, there is nothing that you are going to do that is going to change or alter the course of what's about to happen. And the other thing I think that's really important that I don't want to forget to say, and I know that you've said this before too so many times, which is your experience is your experience. And I think now that, IVF is in the media as much as it's been, whether it's a celebrity, whether it's something that they're talking about in politics, no two IVF cycles are alike because no two patients are alike. So if your sister-in-law or your cousin or your best friend went through IVF, and they did a specific protocol or they did a specific thing in their 2-week wait, doesn't mean you have to, because you are not going to get the same results. Everyone's result is different. Everyone's beta is going to be different. Everybody's embryos are going to be different. And there's just so much science that goes into it. And there's so many roadblocks and speed bumps and all of these things. And I think that you just have to sort of buckle in for the ride and know that you are doing your very best that you can do.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's so great. And it's so great that you're sharing that advice or that insight with so many different patients, because I think it's so important for them to hear that. So you mentioned like when you were first starting out trying, you were
Yeah.
trying at the same time as your sister-in-law. Did they
Yeah.
have no problem getting
No
pregnant?
problem. No
So
problem. Yeah.
that
Sorry.
must have been so hard.
Oh, it was hard. I mean, it's so I watched the movie Joy on Netflix
Oh,
recently.
yes.
Oh my God, so good. So good. And this scene when Jean runs into the bathroom when Louise was born. I remember doing that same thing at Greenwich Hospital. I remember looking at my nephew and going into the bathroom and just losing my what in the bathroom stall, because I think one of the things that when people say, oh, you're trying to conceive, and they think you're just saying, I want a baby, I want to be a mom, I want a baby, I want to be a mom. I wanted a cousin for that little boy, right? And I wanted to have the experiences that my sister-in-law was having. And I wanted my husband to experience what my brother-in-law was experiencing. And I wanted to feel what she was feeling. I wanted that. And I felt at that point, we had just found out that we were not going to get pregnant unless we did IVF. We found out in December. My nephew was born the end of December. And I remember thinking, this may never happen to me. And that was and so it's a accumulation of your own desires and your own wants. And then of course, like if you're like me, which is being a people pleaser, you're like, my mother's never going to have grandchildren. My brother's never going to be an uncle, that little baby is never going to have a cousin to play with. And so that scene in Joy 20 years later, it just shook me to my core because I was like, my God. And it's the same feeling. It is the same feeling. And I know that every day there's women doing the same thing in the same bathrooms all over this country, all over the world, who are longing to be mothers, and feeling like that's just never going to happen.
Yeah. And then I think you also feel guilty that you have mixed emotions.
100%.
And then it's like, no, it is so normal that you can feel. That's why, we're all about the and not that it's or, which is that you can love and celebrate this new nephew and like really be so devastated inside as well. And those things, it's not an enjoyable experience, but it's just more than normal that they're coexisting for sure.
For sure. And to know, to anyone out there listening, to know that it's okay to run out of a room and cry if you need to, and it's okay to take a minute or 10 minutes or a week just in your bed, just to like do what you have to do to get yourself through the process. It's okay to cry, and we don't need to be so strong, and we don't need to be so brave, and we don't have to be positive all the time. It's we want to manage our expectations. I think that's the biggest thing that I feel, and I talk to patients about. Part of what I do now for a living, I tell patients every single day, which is, you have to go into this thinking, what if, right? Because I don't want anybody to get blindsided. And so I don't sugarcoat things because nothing was everything was sugar-coated for me, which made it so much harder. But I think though, in the midst of doing that is when you find your connections with people. Because just like we're sort of validating each other right now, right? We all felt these pains and we all felt these things, but at the time we didn't know that it was okay to feel guilt, and it was okay to feel anger, and you felt guilty about how jealous you were, and so I think that that's something that resonates to this day, when you look at that movie, however many years ago, and the same things happening, it's all the same feelings and emotions.
So who were your biggest supporters during that time? Was there like a particular community or group or family, friends who helped you get through that?
It was my Resolve people. It was my Resolve people, I couldn't relate to anybody. I had maybe one friend that was going through it. But for the most part, it was all of my Resolve family. My husband at the time, very bitter and angry as well. And I think that he felt, and now in hindsight, I know what it was, which is I think guys feel like, or our partners feel like they are the ones that have to keep the ship steered, right? And if something's broken, they fix it. And you can't fix this, they can't fix this for us. So me sobbing in my room he can't fix that. And I think that was really hard. And I think that we didn't have that connection that we needed to have going through this. We weren't on the same page. But my Resolve family was, and I remember, at the time there was no Facebook and there was no Instagram, so no social media, but WebMD had just come out. And I remember there was a thread of like women from Connecticut trying to conceive. And I met this woman, we were chit-chatting, and we both lived in Stamford at the time, Stamford, Connecticut. And we were talking about, we were both doing IUIs at the same time, and we were going to Stop and Shop to pick up pineapple. And I remember there was a girl in front of me on the checkout line with a ton of pineapple. And I tapped her on the shoulder, and I can't remember her name now. And I said so-and-so. And she looked at me and I go, Carrie. And she's like, oh, like we lived like 3 blocks away from each other. We had never met. There was no pictures or profile pictures.
Best story. I love that.
She was getting pineapple for her IUI, and her IUI worked. That IUI worked. Mine didn't. We had our IUI within a day of each other, and hers worked and mine didn't. And but it was just funny because like that was my support system. And then of course my Resolve meetings, and I think the peer support, and of course that's like the foundation of who I am, is the peer support that I received at those Resolve meetings in people's kitchens back in the 90s, when the early 2000s, like there was no virtual anything, sitting around a cheese platter and just talking and a box of tissues. Those were my people, and seeing them push through and get their IVF done showed me that I could push through and get my IVF done. I was a big chicken. I was terrified of taking medication.
Oh, yeah.
I remember I was working in the fertility field at the time, and I was like, people are actually injecting themselves with these needles. And I'm looking at pictures of, Clomid, and at the time, Pergonal was a drug, right? And so I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is this? And I would never be that person. And whoa, and here I am, sitting at this table, and I'm like, okay, so this is me. And then we started talking about, the Clomid side effects. Is anyone else burning up? Is anyone else losing their mind? And we were just like, they were my support system, and they were who I leaned on when I didn't feel like I could keep going. And then, of course, seeing them succeed, seeing them take big steps in their treatment journey was what kept me going. And so, yeah, I would say those are my people. And seeing them experience a loss and knowing that they had me to support them through it, and then they supported me through mine. You can't find that connection with anyone else unless they've been through it. You just can't. Nobody, not your neighbor, not your best friend. They lived what I was living, and we had each other's backs.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Obviously, how we feel about that. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
That's why our mantra is find your people. And
absolutely,
like when you were saying about validating, to me, that's, again, not that there's only one thing that the support groups do, but I feel like that is such a critical part of the support
absolutely.
groups, because you think you're the only one having these emotions that feel so unfamiliar and unpleasant. And then you look around, you're like, no, everyone's feeling this way. Yeah. I will say our now that our groups are virtual, they're doing well and they're thriving, but one bad thing is there can't be cheese.
No, there cannot be cheese. Yeah, exactly. Cheese does make everything better.
They eat their own cheese during these groups, I think, or chocolate, whatever, pick your snack. But yeah. But in-person groups are definitely really cool for that reason.
They are.
So you mentioned like you were already working in the fertility field, and it is kind of ironic to then go through your own struggles with infertility and loss. But how did you get into fertility in the first place?
So I was always working in medicine. I always worked in healthcare, and I had taken like a 6-month stint to do like actuarial work, which was so boring to me. I was like, what is happening here? Like, I can't do this. So I went back to my headhunter at the time, and I'm like, I need something else. So she said, I have this company. It's not too far from where you live, and they're just looking for an executive assistant for the president of this fertility company. And I'm like, I'll take it. That sounds like fun. I could do that. I could do executive assistant. And so that was my entry into this world, and just learning everything from the bottom. And I just loved medicine always. So I always just found myself sort of embedded in, and of course there was, again, no internet, right? So you're learning everything just from doing. And I just remember like sitting in meetings and taking, my steno, listening to what they were talking about. And I got to watch amazing clinics being built, Shady Grove, everything. It was literally like the world was exploding. Like that was the time. It was like the early 2000s when there was so much change, and it was wild. And so I just fell in love with it. And I knew that was just, I probably started my journey, I would say about a year or so into working in the field. And that's when I had met Lisa and Pam Madsen and everybody, all the OGs, right? Mm-hmm. And I was setting up all these golf clinics for the physicians and the scientists. And I got to sit down and listen to lectures about embryology and the newest things that were out. And I just found it. It just clicked. And there we go. I had my journey. I think I was put on this path. I think God or somebody, a higher power, put me here and said, listen, you're going to walk the walk.
That must have been so amazing to see the industry grow like that.
It's been amazing. It's, you go to ASRM and you see people that you've known for so many years, and it's incredible. It's incredible. We are a very lucky industry because it's a very big industry, yet it's so small, at the same time.
So how do you support families now? What's your current role?
So right now I'm working for Inception Fertility, and we started a product line for them about 4 years ago called Bundle Fertility. And Bundle Fertility is a multi-cycle IVF refund guarantee program. And what it does is it helps patients that do not have access to IVF via insurance, and because it's expensive, and like me, it didn't work right away, right? So, my $20,000 investment turned into about a $40,000 investment, and 2 embryos were at stake of me losing everything, right? So no babies, no more money, $40,000 in debt. And so, I just think that until we can have IVF covered everywhere for everyone, this is another option, right? And so, yes, patients can go out and they could finance an IVF cycle, they could put it on a credit card, but what we're seeing is what happens if it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. Now you've got $25,000 in credit card bills. You don't have enough credit to get another cycle. So now you're spending 6 to 9 months to try to pay the bill down so that you can have another cycle. And by then your AMH is lower, right? Your ovarian reserve is lower. And unfortunately, everybody, when we get to this point, we've already lost a lot of our time, so to speak, right? Because we don't realize until it's too late that we're in this sort of situation. So with bundle, patients have the ability to not only consolidate all their IVF services, but for patients that qualify, and we have really good flexibility. We worked really hard on criteria for letting patients into the program until they're 40. I think it's like right before they're 42. So if a patient is under the age of 42 and they have a good ovarian reserve and a prior cycle, they can actually purchase a money back guarantee, right? So patients are going to get 100% of their money back if they're not successful. And the patients that do get their money back, they usually turn around and purchase another program because they've just gotten their money back. So now they have 2 more tries or 3 more tries. And then I've had other patients that get their money back and they go adopt. And I've had patients that get their money back and they decide to live child-free and they put in a pool. But I think what's really cool about it is that you are on your own. You can do things on your own terms. This experience took everything out of me as far as control, right? I'm type A, like I need control. We all do. We all feel like we need to have control. And when you go through IVF or IUI, you don't have control of your body. You don't have control of how your ovaries are going to respond to the medication. You don't have control over that positive pregnancy test or what your embryos are going to do in the embryology lab. You don't have any control. But with this is something that you can control. So, I still advocate, I want IVF for all, I do. And I tell patients all the time if they're like, oh, but you don't understand, this is still going to put me in debt. And I'm like, I do understand. I do it more than anybody. I understand, but you have options now. You can make those decisions. You can decide if you want to apply for a money back guarantee. You could decide if we have a program now that we created for patients where maybe they're afraid to do IVF and they've never tried an IUI and they want to try one IUI. So I have a program where they could do an IUI. And if the IUI is successful, I'll refund them the IVF portion of their program. And if the IVF is not successful, if the IUI is not successful, they get a full IVF cycle and unlimited transfers, which a transfer on average these days is about $5,000 a pop. And that really adds up. For me, doing 3 transfers, that was $15,000 that I didn't think that I was going to need to spend. I didn't have it. So, was I in debt when my daughters were born? Absolutely. Was it easier pill to swallow? Absolutely. And so you got to make someone whole.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The hardest thing is, I think, that mix of the emotional devastation of unsuccessful cycles when you don't have insurance
100%.
is then you have the financial worry and disappointment and really crushing experience financially as well. And so, obviously that's part of why we are so passionate about advocacy is there's all the people who can't even afford to try in any shape or form without insurance. Mm-hmm. And then those who pay out of pocket, often with a struggle to do so, because most of us do not have that amount of money laying around in any way. And then when it's not successful, it just really breaks my heart and is part of why we're so passionate about advocacy. So is your role like marketing or like counseling patients or it's not like marketing in the traditional sense, but I think it sounds like you do a lot of one-on-one patient education about this.
I do. So, at this core of it, I am a patient advocate, right? So I talk to patients every day. I have 2 other ladies on my team. They talk to the patients every day. And then, so it's 50% patient facing. So I literally speak with patients all day long. And then on the days that I don't, I'm usually traveling and I'm talking to physicians and I'm talking to their financial counselors and their nurses because they also need to know that, their patients, the financial health of their patients is really important. And sometimes physicians and clinics can get lost in that because they're so focused on just getting the patient pregnant. and they're not seeing what's going on behind the scenes when somebody doesn't have benefits, right? Or if somebody's benefits are exhausted. And the hardest conversations that I find are patients that didn't know about us to begin with, did an IVF cycle, spent $25,000, no baby. And now they're like, how am I going to afford you? Why didn't I know about you beforehand, right? And so we want more practices to know that this is an option, right? And the practices can have control as to, what kind of packages they set up for their patients with us. We mirror all of the practices' global pricing. So there's nothing that they're not going to get. The patient's going to get all of the same care from their doctor. It's just going to be a different way. It's just an alternative way. And you know what? I have plenty of patients that I'll speak to, and I'll say to them, if your IVF doesn't work, right? Let's say you don't have any embryos that come back viable from PGT. What are you going to do? Are you going to do another retrieval? And if they say to me, oh gosh, absolutely, then bundle is something that they should look into. And if they're not, and they're only going to do this one time, then go back to your clinic and pay for one cycle. But now, right? And you're armed with this information. And one of the things that my doctor never said to me when I was doing IVF, but I'm seeing more and more physicians doing it now, which is, what kind of a family do you want to have? Like, what are you envisioning for your family, right? Because if you want to have 2, 3, or 4 children, that's a different conversation. Let's talk about doing your IVF cycles first. Let's get those retrievals done right now, because your ovarian reserve is, a little bit borderline, as opposed to, oh, you only want to have one child. Okay, we're going to go this route. And so now we have those conversations, and it's incredible to hear what people say. I always saw myself having 3 or 4 children. I come from a big family. And so then I could say to them, okay, you're 36 or 37 right now. Let's just get some embryos banked. Let's work on that being your goal. So that this way, when you're 40 and you want to have your 3rd baby, you have those embryos. Right? So you don't have to ever worry about this ever again. You don't ever have to worry about going through IVF, having an egg retrieval, having enough eggs, having enough embryos come back, from PGT that you can use, because you have the power to change the future now. So secondary infertility was something that was never on my radar as a primary infertility patient. But my doctor never said to me, what are you going to do after this? Right? Never came up in conversation because it just wasn't a thing then. But now with technology, being able to have control over how you build your family, to me, is so priceless.
At least to have more options, I think,
for sure.
And that's why we get really frustrated when we see insurance companies that are requiring some patients to use all of the, transfer all of the embryos that they have before they can retrieve more, because a lot of times it's people thinking ahead to hopefully a second child. Right. And that if they could do a retrieval now when they're younger and their egg quality and reserve is better, it would be so much, more hopeful for the future that they would be able to be successful in subsequent pregnancies.
Yeah, it's about having the conversations, meeting the patients where they're at, and figuring out how they can move forward when they don't have insurance coverage in a way that works for them. And that's what we do, and I love it. And again, I've had patients say to me, like, how can you advocate for like insurance for all, but then you're like selling this package? And I'm like, well, because at some point, hopefully I'll be out of a job.
I know.
I don't want to lose my job, but at the same point, it's like, I want you guys to get coverage, and I have a patient that messages me and they're like, Carrie, we've decided we don't have to do bundle because we just found out we have progeny. I'm like, yes, that's amazing. Like, that's so good. Like, I want you to have your baby. I don't care how you get your baby. I want you to have that baby. I want you to be a mom, and whatever it takes for you to get there, we're here to support you through that. So, yeah.
It sounds like a really, really cool program. As somebody who did 3 IVF cycles, I really wish it had existed a long time ago. But how does it work from the logistical side of thing? Is it available to anyone? Do you have to be with certain partner clinics? What does that look like?
So we're excited because we work within an Inception network, but we also work with outside of the Inception network. So we have a lot of practices that have recently come on board that are not inside the Inception network with a Prelude clinics or anything like that. So we work with as many practices as that want to work with us. So right now we have a lot of locations in Texas and California and Florida. We have somebody in New York. We have Philadelphia. We're going to be launching somebody in New Jersey soon. So we really are trying to get out there across the country. We need to get a little bit more into South Carolina's, and, we have Georgia. Georgia has a reproductive biology associates is in Georgia, and they have so many locations. And, we just try to go where the patients need us. And very often we'll have a patient that says, I wish I could use you, but my clinic doesn't offer you. And we contact the clinic for the patient and say, would you be willing to work with us for this patient of yours that wants to go through with this treatment? So, yes, our goal is to be all across the country, but we have a lot of rooftops right now. And for patients that we don't have a location for, we still work with them, because at the core of it, I'm an advocate for my patients. It doesn't have to necessarily be just about doing bundle or doing IVF. If your journey consists of adopting an embryo, then I'm going to help you figure that out. And so, whether I'm working or it's 10 o'clock at night and somebody messages me that, I knew 20 years ago, and they're going through this struggle, or they know somebody, can I send my friend to you? Can she message you? Can she text you? Absolutely. We're all here to help each other.
Yeah. And I mean, you are a really amazing example of this, and it's so genuine and it's so much from your heart for sure. So you're kind of like an exemplary example of that. But also, I just feel like this field in general is really committed to, like, I think, advocacy and supporting patients in a way that sometimes isn't really aligned with their bottom line financially, but that they want across the board what's better for patients. And so I think that is a testament to our field for sure.
100%, 100%.
So we'll put links in the show notes, but if somebody wanted to get in touch and learn more about bundle, or even to see where the different clinics are, how it's best for them to do that.
Absolutely. So it's bundlefertility.com, and there's no E after the bundle. So it's bundlfertility.com. And absolutely go on our website, and there's videos from our team on there. We have such an incredible team. We're a tiny team, but we're a mighty team. Everybody on our team has been touched in some way. I've had an advocate who, she donated her eggs when she was younger. I have somebody on my team who wasn't able to afford IVF and couldn't go through it. I have somebody on my team went through secondary infertility and miscarriages. And so we all have been affected by it in some way. And I think that adds to our desire to help people. And like to your point, you find your people, right? And so when you find somebody on the phone who's willing to tell you about their own journey and be real with you and be your cheerleader, to me, like, that's priceless, because at the end of the day, the goal is the same. The goal is to have your baby, right? To make your dreams come true. And there's so many different ways to get there. And so we're just thrilled that we can help patients, no matter what it is. Even if it's to just listen to them vent about, something completely different, we're like, get it off your chest, because we get it. We've been there. So
I love it. And like, to Kate's point, there are so many people who are in this field because they know all too well exactly what it feels like to be in your shoes, that it is.
Absolutely.
A lot of people who have your back.
They do. They have your back. And, the physicians at these practices, I know that it's hard. They're always, it's very busy. It's as somebody that sat in a waiting room for as many years as I sat, and witnessed the things that I witnessed, these doctors and these nurses, they work so incredibly hard. And I remember when I worked in a clinic for a year, I spent 11 years working at a clinic in Connecticut, and going into the room where all the nurses were and getting to call patients and give them their pregnancy, their beta results. And of course, the harder calls too, they become a family, and they are a huge cheering squad for their patients. And that is the one thing that I would love for patients to take away, that, like, we invest every ounce of ourselves to your cycle being successful and to making you guys feel like you're being heard. And so, it's an incredible niche to be in, this incredible field of infertility, for sure.
So looking back on your own journey and all of your years working in this field, what is one thing that you would say to somebody who's just starting up to grow their family right now?
If I could say one thing, I would say, get your ovarian reserve checked very early on. I will be like that with my own daughters, my cousins, anybody that I know that's younger and they're thinking they're going to want to start their family within the next, 3 to 5 years or whatever. Get a baseline ovarian reserve testing. That's the most important thing to me. Get genetic testing. If your OBGYN looks at you funny, go get a different OBGYN. push to be heard, get that all figured out now so that you know how much time you have to sort of get things done. And if your ovarian reserve is on the lower side, try to get your eggs frozen, try to figure it out. I think it's worth the investment. Listen to your body, trust your gut, speak up when you're at the doctor, speak up. Do not be afraid to say that you're having pain during your periods or, anything like that, because all of that, if you have PCOS, always know that your body functions as a whole, right? It's not just about your reproductive organs. And so I think that's what I would say to somebody starting to grow their family. Just don't be prepared. Be prepared for anything. Get into the doctor's office, have those conversations. If you don't feel like you're being heard, get a different doctor. Check with your insurance. Not that you're going to need IVF, but check to know that it's something that's covered. If you're going for a new job, check to see if it's something that's going to be covered. It's a very big part of that, right? So yes, that's what I would say for sure.
And then, so not to be the negative Nelly here, but on the kind of alternative, what is something you wish no one would ever say again to people that are struggling to grow their family?
The one thing? There's only one thing I can say.
No, well, you can just pick one, but I know there's more than one.
The word. It's relax.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Take your time. Take a vacation. Relax. It's gonna happen. Don't do that. I honestly, if I could say what they should say, can I say what they should say?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Nothing. Don't inquire. Don't get nosy. Don't be nosy. And if somebody comes to you and says, this is what we're going through, you say, I'm here for you. I'm here to listen. I'm here to hug you. I'm here if you need somebody to go with you to an appointment. You could talk to me. That's it.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
That's all I say.
Beautiful. Yes. Yeah, I love nothing is less relaxing than someone telling you to relax. And nothing is worse than someone telling you to relax when you have a clinical diagnosis and relaxing has nothing to do with getting pregnant.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's why you have to find your people.
Yes.
And I think that one of the things that if I could give one more piece of advice for somebody starting to grow their family and they find themselves in this world, learn to set barriers, learn to put barriers. It's okay. It's okay for you to have barriers. If you choose to tell certain people, that's great. If you feel like those people are going to be the people that support you, I think it's so important. Because even if you were to, God forbid, suffer a loss, if you know that that person is the person that's going to get you through that, why not have them know ahead of time? And you suffer in silence if you go through something as devastating as that. But it's okay to set boundaries, and it's okay to say no to things that are making you feel uncomfortable. And you're not a bad person for feeling guilty. Just know that you have the control and this is your journey, and you can make this journey whatever you need it to be for your own mental health. That's what I would say.
I love that so much.
Thank you. I think it's the only thing that makes sense. None of it makes sense. So I think if there's anything that's going to make sense, it's that.
Thank you, Carrie, so much for talking with us today. It was so lovely hearing about your own family story, but also getting to learn more about Bundle and kind of everything that you've done, all the different hats you've worn over the years in the fertility space.
It was really great just to talk to you guys. And it's a long time coming, right, Kate?
Yes, I love it.
I love it too.
We hope you'll join us next time for more family building stories and resources. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts to make sure you never miss an episode. And follow us on social media at allpathsfb or visit our website, allpathsfb.org, for more information about our work. All Paths Family Building is so grateful to the members of our circle of support who are vital to our ability to provide emotional support, education, and advocacy that is open to anyone struggling to grow their families. Today, we want to give a special shout out to our platinum sponsor, EMD Serono. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Please help spread the word so that anyone struggling to grow their family can join the conversation. It's an honor to walk with you on your family building journey. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Please help spread the word so that anyone who is struggling to grow their family can join the conversation. It's an honor to walk with you on your family building journey.